Is there a strategy that'll help you grow your company faster? CEO Sales Strategies is an investigative business podcast for entrepreneurial people who never stop asking questions. Highly acclaimed sales revenue growth expert Doug C. Brown interviews CEOs, business owners, and professionals who serve them to uncover and share actionable tips and methods behind their bulletproof sales strategies. Topics covered on the show include their failures, struggles, secrets, and processes that help them succeed in selling millions to billions of dollars of their products and services, all with the sole aim of helping you grow your business. If you are eager to know the most effective sales secrets from the A players of the game, then the CEO Sales Strategies podcast is certainly the place to be.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. This is Doug Brown, your host. And today we're going to be talking with Mr. Michael Lovitch. He owns a company right now called Bathwater Institute. He is a company creator. He's created many companies. And we're going to talk about how he's done that. And what I want you to particularly pay attention to, is the fact of how simple he keeps things and building his businesses. Now, he's been bootstrapping businesses for years. In other words, he hasn't been taking funding on these businesses. So he creates a business from ground level up, like many people have done. And then once they get it to a certain place, then potentially funding or whatever might happen. But the reality is he's a pretty good and pretty smart guy about doing this type of thing. But I want you to keep in mind how simple he keeps everything in the process of when he's building it, because there's a couple of things he focuses on. One is the customer journey to a sale, right? And doing it the right way, but keeping it very simple. And too many people I find are complicating this sales process, if you will, and trying to get so fancy on it that they create a lot of challenges for themselves in the game. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about marketing. We're also going to talk about how entrepreneurs feel, how entrepreneurs need a network of support, and different aspects of that as well on this call. So without further ado, let's go speak with Mr. Michael Lovitch. Michael, welcome to the call.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate you being here today. You've got a really cool background for people. Would you mind sharing a little bit about, what got you here?
Professional life. I was a special ed teacher for a while, burned out real fast because a lot different than I thought it'd be. So it's time to move on, and wallowed around in grad school. This is kind of the 90s. Really enjoyed grad school. They paid me $1,300 a month to teach and got to learn and liked it there. But, I could live off that. That was kind of fun. But from there, I did need money. I had a lot of debt. So I learned how to sell. I figured out that was only what I was good at. I don't know why I was doing so much academic stuff. I just started selling like cell phones. And then all of a sudden I ended up being a pretty good sales dude for a while. So I was selling got to the point pretty quick where I was selling complex, database encryption key management to banks and government, getting a nice check. Wasn't passionate about it, but I could work very little and, make what I needed to make, because I never cared about accumulating wealth. I just cared about having a good time with my friends. So made enough to do that. Then I met a girl I'm still married to, and got married, and then a kid was coming. And then I started taking things serious. I didn't really care before. And I was flying to DC all the time for work to sell things, because I was selling to government. And then I always wanted to do my own thing. And that's when I took a risk when my wife was pregnant on she's starting her first company, like a real one. And the grad school actually came into play because I had studied unconscious processing at University of California, Davis, like trances and unconscious kind of psychology that actually help people. And I saw online that everybody was selling like hypnosis, new age stuff that didn't work. And I knew from the research what they were selling was bullshit. I knew that the people claiming they were hypnotists weren't real. And did a reverse. There was no Google back then. There's Google, but you couldn't buy traffic, but you could buy it on Yahoo, on Overture. I reverse engineered that. I'm like, whoa, there's like $5,000 a day in this shit, and they're all selling crap. what if I were to take real people, like doctorate level psychologists who've been in practice for 20 years, because there's actually academic trances. I mean, there's like well-studied trances that actually get results that aren't magic. And what if I, because I've been in dialogue with all these professors and people making this stuff, what if I could publish them and just take a piece of that? And that's kind of what I did. I did it kind of from my bedroom. Is my sister's a lawyer. I read a book on how to be a publisher from Dan Kennedy, and my sister wrote me a contract, and I called up all these people who were legit psychologists, most of them had textbooks and stuff. And can I license your trance? Will you go to a studio, record it, and I'll sell it online? And then I showed them all the that was being sold. I'm like, and by the way, you're helping to clean up this crazy, like, in my opinion, unethical world. And they said, yeah. And I started it. Didn't know what I was doing, but we had good product and just used my sales skills. And back then, there's still online, there's things called affiliates. I don't know if you know what that is, but online there's affiliate programs. So people who have a following online, and back then it was bloggers, right? There's no YouTubers, there's no YouTube yet, there's no Facebook. This is like 2004. But there was a lot of people had a lot of newsletters was the main thing. So they had big email lists and they had a lot of following. And so I would find people who had big followings, and just like a good sales guy, I've had my gold mine thing. And remember gold mine, like Act, your little software.
Remember that? Yep.
And I basically contacted 50 a day and would be like, hey, and I'd read their blog. I'd be like, hey, I saw you talking about self-esteem, blah, blah, blah. I really like this thing. By the way, we have a program by Dr. Shirley McNeil on ego state strengthening. It's a blah, blah, blah. And just really incredible. And you might be interested in this. And you mind if I send you one for review? Let me know if you're open to that. That's it. So I just kept doing that. And so the process was sales, meaning I didn't try to sell them anything. I would read their stuff, do a background check. I wouldn't just blanket email people. I would actually read and decide if they were a fit, compliment them, actually read their stuff, give them an opportunity to sample what we had, and then put them on a follow-up sequence. And then after that, it's like 50 new a day. And then once it was like a week, hey, did you get it? Okay, great. Let me know what you think. And then, hey, did you listen to it? And then finally, when they started listening to it, I'd be like, hey, what did you think? And then if they said, whoa, because it was like, I knew I had the best. I had started off with like 10 therapists and 10 programs, and they were the best in the world. And so I knew that they were the best. I mean, I had Jack Singer, who coached Olympians on sports performance hypnosis. I had Roberta Chemez, who basically worked with Dr. Oz before he sold out, in the hospitals and on diet adherence. I had, everybody was the best. Maggie Phillips was the top pain therapist in the world. I had her pain trances, blah, blah, blah. So they were badass. And so what did you think? Oh my God, amazing. And I was like, hey, here's the deal. Would you mind sharing that with your audience? Just what you said. And if you do that and they buy, I'll give you X% of the sale. And then it was like easy, like, sure. So I didn't like ask them, like most people who try to recruit people, this, hey, you can make all this money, is the opposite of that. Versus is an integrity thing. Like this, do you really think this is great? Before I even ask them to sell my thing, that's what, and I get people all the time going to me, can you promote my blah, blah, blah. I'm like, why? I don't even know you. Like, why would I promote you? So it was a very like, because I used to sell to chief security officers, back in when I was selling that, they're no, you don't call them up. Hey, I got the software for you. Hey, what's going on? And what do you don't just sell things to people. You make a relationship first, you find out their needs, and you don't waste time. So that's what I did every day, and then eventually it was $1 million a year, and then 2, and then 3, because, the first I had a great product, like they worked. And it was just that. I mean, so it's basically using sales for a great product with a system of interest, make sure they really dug it, and asking them to tell the truth and paying them for it.
Yeah, and I think what's really cool about this, I mean, you built that that business up to a significant level doing this, but you're applying B2B sales practices, and what you're doing is you're accessing other people's networks, and then from accessing the other networks, what you're doing is you're providing value to them and confirming that they find value. So it's a win-win sale at that point.
Right. You don't want, you never want, I just don't believe in it. You never want somebody to do something against their own ethics just for the cash. Like, I don't want to be the temptress.
Right.
So the idea is, because I kind of do believe in a honest world, and I don't want to be a part of the problem. So yeah, I only want people to endorse something that I produce or whatever if they believe it. It's just bad karma. And then you get much better results anyway.
And then, then they're sharing it out to their audiences. So now you're tapping the power of their audiences and you're doing a share, right? Basically with these people.
Yeah, you give them commission.
Right.
Then I learned, and then what I had to learn was copywriting, because persuasion in print. And because, my background was persuasion and also being a special ed teacher, I'm really good at dumbing things down. Most people do that all wrong. They try to write in this complex way. And I find I write to like somebody who's special ed. I mean, I write so simple that you can't not miss the point, and it's not fancy. So the special ed training helped a lot, because I could really make it simple. Like, what is this? What isn't it? And then I learned some copy stuff. And so the stuff that we had, actually, when people would share it, it converted really high and people made lots of money. And then I'd say, hey, you want to make more money? Let me help you with your recommendation. Like, you could say this, you could say that. Hey, do you want to interview my therapist? So after they got results, I'd help them get better results. So I coached them then on how to be a better salesperson, because I just learned persuasion well.
Mm-hmm.
And having the master's degree in the social sciences didn't hurt, right? And basically hypnosis is unconscious processing persuasion. So understanding how humans think didn't hurt at all, writing copy.
Yeah, it does. And I love what you said here about keeping things simple, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many entrepreneurs out there, and I know I've been guilty of this myself.
Y'all are.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
and it's not really complex. I mean, when you break it down, sale or selling to somebody is not complex, and but in copy, how, because some people like copy's messaging really when it comes down to it. So it's whether it's verbal or in print or whatever, it's messaging to me. How imperative or is it for people to keep it simple and copy?
Very, very, very. I mean, unless you're writing to a technical audience, but even then you can overcomplicate it. I mean, so yeah, like if you're writing to a technical audience of, let's say it's B2B and you're writing to practitioners, right? Let's say you're like, we have Chris Kresser in our group. Let's say you're writing to him and he's writing to other functional medicine doctors about things they can apply in their practice, scientific stuff. I mean, you have to go a little higher because you don't want to bore them, right? So it depends on your audience, but when you're going to a consumer, right, or a thing, then you don't really need to make it that complicated. You can overcomplicate thing, and then you can answer all the stuff in the FAQs that it's complicated, right? Like it's
well, and there's some people that the high type dominance, if you will, they're not interested in something that's complicated. They give it to me in 5 points, and.
That's like that. My favorite quote is like, sorry, I didn't have the time to write you a short email. Right? Because when you don't have time, you just blab on. If you have time to think about it, it should be pretty short.
Right. And the reality is that, there are certain people who want more information, but then like you said, you can cover it in the FAQs, the frequently asked questions.
Where you want them to ask questions. So like, yeah, when I first started, it was pretty funny because I didn't know what copywriting was. I just knew I had the best product, but there was more like I did the old school. You still see people doing it. Like, here's the product description, and that's how I did it until I learned that's not the way to do it, because you do have to write copy. But when I first started, I was getting some traffic. Traffic means people coming to look at it, and conversion wasn't what I thought it would be. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to learn copywriting. But meanwhile, who told me? I hired a consultant because I believe in that. So I hired a guy who was like crushing it online, an older dude, to review my stuff. And he's like, oh yeah, you got to write copy, but this is amazing stuff. But yeah, it needs a lot of work. How do I learn it? I'll coach you. What do I do in the meantime? He goes, what you do? He goes, here, do this. He goes, above the fold, and online above the fold means you can see it without scrolling. So
yep,
you say
on your computer screen, right?
Right. So above the fold, he goes, have a headline, describe it, and then have a big box that says, any question you have, big or small, please ask it here. Right? Just have a big question box and then do all of your bullshit as you're practicing. Right? So I was basically going for a question. And half the people went to the site would just ask a question there. So I was getting leads. This is genius. I mean, I wish I would have thought of it. I just followed advice. So then half the people went to my website because it was right there. It was basically asking the whole goal of the page was to get you to ask a question, not to buy the product.
Right.
Right. Because he changed my focus. And I got an email, which is amazing. So I could follow up and put them on my newsletter. And so I would just answer the questions. And those people converted like crazy. So I got in a dialogue. And then I took all my questions, right? Made it into a database, which isn't hard. So you start seeing the same questions. And then I'd see what answers worked for closing the sale. So it's just me, and then I hired a customer service person and I was able to give it to them. Right. So I made a knowledge base. And then when I started to learn copy, which took a couple months to kind of get going on that, I took my answers and all the questions, and that's how I wrote the copy on. So if you don't have that skill yet, go for the question and practice. So that was a lucky stroke of somebody giving me good advice, because instead of converting, I was all night answering questions, but then I was like, oh, whoa, the sales letter wrote itself. Because then I started to know what people wanted to know about each product. I had good answers. Actually, I mean, the answers were real. I had a good product. If you don't have a good product, none of the works, by the way. I want to tell you, like, don't sell crap. I don't believe in selling crap, but if you sell crap, none of this will work.
Yeah.
Or have lifetime customers, it doesn't work.
Yeah. You're not going to get repeat business for sure. You might
You're
fool
not going to
somebody
refer
once.
people, your sale. This doesn't work. It's products.
What I love about that is it's so simple, right? You're just asking, what's your most pressing question, that you have on X.
Because most people say, get this free report, right? Or whatever. That's great, but you're not learning shit.
Right.
Then you give them some PDF. Instead of that, go for the question.
And then you're taking the answers from the question. Because I know I've done that. I mean, we used to do this type of thing in focus groups years ago, right? We'd spend lots of money and go do focus groups. And we would get the questions and we would look through the data at the end of the 2 weeks of the focus groups or whatever. And we'd say, okay, what's all the crossover stuff happening? Then we would take that crossover stuff, and that's what we would use in the marketing side of the business. Yep. And so it's very similar, but online you could do this for so inexpensive. I mean, we were paying people, $100 a head to come into the focus group, doing 4 of those a day for 2 weeks.
Right. And you can see the string, because I'd answer a question, they'd have a follow-up. So you start to see and then later on you can take that and copy and just almost duplicate it. So that's when you say, like, hey, I bet you're wondering if, because they've already, right? So you start to see a pattern, and then when you write this conversational copy, you write it like, hey, you're probably wondering if that, and yeah, the answer to that is, and then you might wonder this. And then you're just taking them through. It's like they think they think you're a genius because you're like, this is what's going through, because I know what's going through their minds then, and I just kind of take them through what's already in their heads.
So you're positioning as an expert, actually using the answers that they gave you and just answering their questions, I should say. And so now it's positioning you as an expert. So people are going to want to talk with you anyways at that point, or buy from you because they trust you.
Later on, you don't need to have that because your copy is so good. And then you have I kept moving the box lower and lower. Copy got good, and then I didn't need it.
So you would write the copy and the box would go down, and then
because then it's like, again, like simple stuff. It's like, I bet you're wondering. I mean, you can just write that. It's pacing and leading, and then you're like pretty much right. You know what they're wondering, because I've answered that a million times. I know they want to know that. And so you just kind of run them through, and they're like, oh, well, you know me.
But what I love about what you're saying is everything. I mean, you're a company creator. I mean, we haven't even gotten into all the companies, but what I love about what you're saying is, and I know this in real practicality, because you and I were talking about a company the other day. You take things and you break them down into their simplistic forms, and you start and you keep things simple. And so as you're keeping things simple again and again in the copy, you're doing the same thing. So the whole theme of this thing, that how you've built up your businesses, is simplicity. So I really appreciate that, because that's a really great message for people to understand. I mean, people complicate stuff so.
Well, I mean, you train salespeople. The Sandler sales submarine and Spin's great, by the way, but they make it. That is a simple, great method. I love that, but people can make that complicated.
Yeah, and it's but not to beat up on Sandler, because, you know, I went to Sandler training myself.
It's great. It can just get super confusing.
Very confusing because of the, you know, it's a methodology, but what we're not looking at is the overall customer journey sales system, right? It's just
I love Sandler as well, but I just remember doing all my sales trainings when I was learning. I was like, geez, you got to boil it down, right? But no, I like Sandler as well. They're all valuable.
Right.
People just make them complicated. Like they're all actually simple. It's the way they're taught and the way people try to do them. I think that overcomplicates things. If that makes sense. They're all good systems, in my opinion.
So you have a company that I'm near and dear to at this moment because of the vibe and the people, and it's called Baby Bathwater. And just so listeners, I'm a member of Baby Bathwater, just for and just the concept and the people involved are just so great, because I've had some opportunities to interact with some of them now. Right. How did you come up with that idea? I'm curious.
Well, that was after, it was a joke gone good, but it was simple. So that was this was never supposed to be something. This is after I exited my second company. My friend Hollis, who's my partner in this, had exited his company 9 years ago. We were bored, and we had gone, like, I believe in, when you're starting a company bootstrapping, you don't have business experience. Like I was a special ed. I don't know, I didn't go get an MBA. I didn't have that Rolodex. Never rented a corporation. I didn't know how that shit worked. So these groups are great. These some people call them masterminds, business shows, whatever. I joined a lot of them, you know, like to get help, you know, how do I do this? How do I do that? And there's value there. Hollis, and that's where I met Hollis. You know, we decided that if he was going to go to one, I'd go to one. But we also, that's why it's Baby Bathwater. The baby was, you learned a lot of shit. The bathwater was, didn't really like most of the people in them. And that I stopped sharing, because I was like in the 8-figure mastermind or whatever. And then I found myself not sharing the stuff I really thought could help people with people I didn't like, especially if they were unethical. So I'm like, I'm not going to help you sell your shit. Like, you're doing crappy lead gen. Like, why would I help you do that? Right. So fast forward, Hollis and I always said we're going to do a company together when we both sold ours, because we had different business partners, which are great. But we just said, hey, we should partner up someday because we got the same vibe and we could have a lot of fun. And then we both did. I had like a lot of them. I had a lot of employees in my second company. I mean, it's crazy. I didn't want to work hard. And my daughter was 7. I like my wife. I wanted some family time. And Hollis wanted to go ski the world. So we had to do something. And all our friends said, well, you always make fun of all those groups. Why don't you do something? And we're like, okay, we do that. And so we decided to throw a party with all the, you know, maybe 40 of the people we met over the last like 7 or 8, 9 years that we thought were our vibe. And we just made a bunch of rules, which was what we don't want to do. I think a lot of people talk about vision, like, what do you want to create? We basically based it on what we didn't want to create. I think nobody pays enough time to that. So we were a bunch of don'ts. Right? But a lot of people say have a vision, and no, like, I think to be different, you want to say what you're not is almost way more important than what you are. So we went through all these things and nope, we're not doing this. We're not doing that. We're not doing this. And the Baby Bathwater was the name, which is, it's the Baby Bathwater Institute. We thought it'd be funny to act like it was like a higher learning type thing. And the idea of Baby Bathwater, you know, don't throw the baby as a bathwater. It's like a life philosophy. There's a lot of ways to play with that, but it's funny. And we always talked about it. We named it that because we didn't want to name it like Next Level Mastermind or 10 ROI or Success U or Genius Network. We didn't want the type of people that would be a part of those kind of things. So we like silly. And I guess there's some, you know, the no's where we didn't, I don't like the status games played by entrepreneurs, I guess is the biggest pet peeve we have. And so the problem with a lot of these groups is like, oh yeah, I'm 8 figures or I'm a big deal. And this big dealism, I think, has to go. So have a company or do what you do, but do it for you. And money's great, but don't do it for the status and the accolades. And so we were like, none of those people. We call them star fuckers. Like, if you need that, don't come here. Right. So we don't want those people. And we also, what bugged us about people was people just in it for the money. They didn't give what they were creating. Right. So we call it give a shitters. So we only wanted people the energy of people who actually care what they do. So it's like, if you love tires and you're in the tire market, awesome. If you saw some opportunity on a spreadsheet for tires, that's not who we want. I want somebody who cares about what they create. If you're have a digital agency that's doing Facebook ads, you better love that and love helping your clients. If you're just doing it to create an agency, that energy is that ruins things. So we want give a shitters, right? And also people who are naturally generous. It's a good word for it. Some people are contrived generous, where they read some book by Adam Grant, Give and Take, and now they put you on something and they're going to be a giver, but they're not really givers. They're soul suckers. So we wanted energy givers, nice people. And then we also thought that people would help each other, that they liked each other. You only meet people, you don't meet them around a room at a Marriott, some round table. You meet them by doing, you meet them while drinking at a bar, you meet them while skiing, you meet them while mountain biking, you meet them while dancing, you meet them by listening to music. You don't meet them over round tables at a stale hotel. So let's create a vibe that's fun where people do shit together. And sure, we share some content, but that's not the focus. So anyway, we just kind of created a bunch of no's and then did the opposite. And then ended up with a group of neat people.
Yeah, and it took off, right? Because I mean, the way I actually found out about the Baby Bathwater Institute, and by the way, when I heard the name, I was just cracking up. I loved it. Right. The way I found out about it was through a very successful entrepreneur, right? I mean, and I think he had exited his last company, and I think they sold it for like $300 million or something of that nature. So I was asking him, I said, what do you know anything that's legitimate?
Right.
Where there's like real business entrepreneurial people that don't have egos the size of Montana,
right?
That all they want to do is get together and they want to help one another, but they also want to do it in an environment that, is a non-threatening or non-ego environment. Right. And your company's name came right out of his mouth, right? And
cool. That's nice to hear.
And so the reason that I'm spending some time on this is because I think people who are in that play, who legitimately want to help people, who legitimately are doing something already today, but I wouldn't say it's so much just mission driven, but they have a passion. Like you said, if they're doing tires, they have a passion to, help people be safe on the road or whatever it might be.
Whatever it is, or go faster, whatever it is, doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That, those are great people to be around. And these are all like any businesses I've talked to so far that are there. These are all cool people and they're all successful people, but they think business to business. So it's not, they might be doing business consumer, but they think in the terms of business, not in the terms of ego status or hyperinflation, right? So they're
mostly B2C companies. We really don't have many B2B at all, but they're mostly B2C. That's our specialty, but yeah.
Yeah, no, and I understand that. It's just the mindset is whether they're selling B2C or B2B, the mindset feels like it's business to business because they think about business as business, but they also have very balanced ways of looking at life as well. Right. And so I'm going to put the notes in for Baby Bathwater in the show notes, folks, but it's something I recommend you check it out. It's a good place to be. Michael, I appreciate it.
And just so your people know, like I don't normally wear sunglasses inside. I had an eye procedure, so it's pretty hideous under here. I'm not going to show you, but no, I'm not a guy that normally would wear sunglasses in the inside, but I'm out of respect to you guys, I'm keeping them on because it's pretty brutal under here and I don't want to shock you, but just so you know, yeah, this isn't a cool rock star act. I had to go, I bought these today just because I knew I was on here and I thought it would be pretty like yucky to see a bunch of scabs on somebody's eyes while they're talking. So that's why this is going down.
I agree. I agree with you.
Yeah. I showed Doug before. I was like, put them on.
Yeah, literally. Like, Michael, put the glasses back on.
It's pretty bad.
I had, I grew up in the medical field, and even me, I was like, whoa, put it back on, brother.
Yeah, it's a necessary procedure. Yeah, but thanks for and then your people, like like they have questions about not our group because that's the thing, but B2C people have questions. I'm pretty open and like to help people out. Anybody in the B2C space, who's doing stuff, have a lot of knowledge there. If you have questions, reach out. I can help you that way. I mean, I know where the bodies are buried in that world. So we're not a come to Baby Bathwater or bus kind of thing. We like to help people, whether they're coming to our thingy or not. If that makes sense. It's
it's
real
real. It's real people and real businesses coming together for I would say kind of a mission to have quality of life. That's what I got out of this.
You got to have good times. What are you doing this for? You want time with your family. If you have a family, you want to. I believe that friends are your family. You have your wife and kid and your parents, but then your other families, your buddies, and it's nice. I have a lot of buddies, not maybe who aren't business people, but these are my business buddies.
Right.
And girls are going to be, and it's just fun to do life together. And as you know, it's challenging running a company because you have payroll. It's not all looks easy. It's not. It's hard. And nobody understands like laying people off is not fun. I've had to do that. My companies didn't always just go like this. And then you're firing people and then their kids are in college. It's heartbreaking. And then you have to tell your wife, oh, we don't have any money this month. So it's to have other people to talk to about that kind of stuff who actually get it. It's nice to have people who get the thingy and who have perspective on life and know it's good times, but those are there for you when there's bad times. Because no matter how good you're doing, there's going to be bad times. Like it's just the way it goes. And to have a group that has your back, that you can laugh about it with, it might give you it might give you a loan. It's certainly nice, in the bad times. So
it's a wonderful place to be. I liken it when I was in the music business. If you got in a van with a bunch of guys and you're traveling around to gig to gig to gig, eventually you're going to get a flat tire. I mean, that's just what happens,
Or somebody's going to go to rehab. Right?
Somebody's got to go to rehab.
I mean, it should happen. Like people go, you see, I mean, people go crazy, man. And then you got to have their back. Right. Because everybody gets a couple redos if you're their real friend. Like people they crack under stress and they get weird, and then you got to be their buddy, and then you bring them back, right? That's kind of half of it. I found entrepreneurs are very emotional, more raw than most people, and that can mean more power, but also they're more vulnerable. Because to be a good entrepreneur, you really have to be able to rip all that off. It's hard. So entrepreneurs, they can go down pretty hard emotionally because they're so out there, and then they got to have friends to pick them back up. I found so. It's a different breed.
I agree with that. And what I like about everything we've talked about today, and even Baby Bathwater Institute, I know going through the process, you've kept it simple. You've kept it like digestible and easy to understand, right? Everything is simplistic through the thing. Yeah. I love that theme through today's podcast, and I appreciate you being on here, Michael.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's fun.
So we'll be talking in the very near future.
Yeah,
so thanks again.
To talk about. Cheers. Bye-bye.
All right. Simplicity, 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 simplicity. That is the theme of today's episode. When I really break it down, and accessing other people's networks and keeping that as simple as possible. When we're communicating with human beings like to have clarity. When they have clarity, then they feel comfortable. When they feel comfortable, they're going to respect you, they're going to trust you, and they're going to like you. If you ever thought about when you're confused on an aspect, and if somebody is confusing you with the conversation, eventually it gets a little irritating, right? And what happens during that irritation? Well, the likability drops for sure, and you don't really trust it as well. And so when you're accessing people's networks and you want to access people's networks, keep it simple, keep it clear, let them know where you're going. You don't have to do razzle dazzle marketing. It's very straightforward. People love to be able to consume things quickly. Why? Well, if you think about this in human nature, anytime when they were growing up and they couldn't do so, in school or whatever, guess what? They were, admonished, they were embarrassed. There was different things that happened to them. So nobody likes that. So keep it simple throughout this whole communication process, and you'll fare better. I highly recommend you check out the Baby Bathwater Institute. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking for a great place to be, to have somebody be there, when you kind of need a little bit of inspiration or help or advice. It's an awesome place to be. I'm personally there as well. So that's it, guys and gals. Appreciate you listening again. Do me a favor. If you like this episode, please go up and subscribe to the channel. The more subscriptions I get, the higher the views, obviously, and the more the podcast is seen. That is my ask of a gift from you to me. I will keep giving gifts by bringing on quality and qualified people. If you would, let me know what you want to have us talk about. I will take that subject matter and I will actually put it together and deliver it back to you. So again, if you like this, please subscribe. If you really like it, give it a 5-star review. I would really appreciate that as well. If you need any help with your sales in your company, anybody wants to get to the top 1% of sales globally, or company wants to get to the top 1% globally in their industry, reach out to me at doug@businesssuccessfactors.com or dougbrown1234 at LinkedIn, or just give me a call at 603-595-0303. And as always, go out and sell something, sell a lot of it, sell it for high profit. Until next time, this is Doug C. Brown of the CEO Sales Strategy signing off.